What if the most powerful move you could make in love was to stop chasing, to stop calling first, to stop trying to decode mixed signals, to stop bending yourself to fit into someone else's comfort zone? The truth is, the moment you refuse to chase, everything shifts. You stop selling yourself short. You stop giving your heart to people who haven't earned it. You create space, and in that space, people begin to feel your absence, your worth, your mystery. They start to realize that access to you is a privilege, not a guarantee. You're no longer trying to convince someone to stay. You're attracting someone who wants to stay, someone who meets your energy, someone who respects your time, your standards, your love. And the best part? You're no longer drained by trying to hold something together that was never meant to last. Instead, you feel in control, calm, clear, like you've finally remembered who you are. This isn't about playing games. It's about reclaiming your power. And once you do that, the right people start showing up because you've raised the bar without ever saying a word. What happens when you refuse to chase? Everything you've been waiting for starts chasing you. You know what's exhausting? Trying to constantly prove your worth to someone, trying to get them to see how amazing you are, always feeling like you're one text away, one compliment away, one act of kindness away from finally getting them to choose you. And in that cycle, something really dangerous starts to happen. You begin selling yourself short bit by bit because your energy shifts from connection to convincing, from being in your power to chasing something that deep down you're afraid you'll never fully have. But the truth is, when you stop chasing, you stop putting yourself in these situations where your value feels like it's constantly on trial, where you feel like every interaction is an audition. You stop shrinking to fit into someone else's inconsistent effort or their lukewarm interest. And that's when everything starts to change, not just in the way you show up, but in how others show up for you. When you refuse to chase, it's not because you don't care. It's not because you've turned off your emotions or you're suddenly cold. It's because you finally realize that your worth isn't something to be earned in someone else's eyes. It's something that already exists, whether they recognize it or not. You stop negotiating with your dignity. You stop editing yourself just to be more palatable. You stop treating your attention like it's on clearance and start treating it like something premium, because it is. We're so used to this idea that love has to be earned and that the more effort we give, the more valuable we become. But what if I told you that the most magnetic version of you isn't the one who tries harder, but the one who knows they don't have to try so hard, the one who brings value to the table and lets others decide if they're ready to meet you there, because you're not dragging them anymore. And here's what happens. When you're not chasing, you're observing. You're listening more than you're explaining. You're noticing how someone treats you, how consistent they are, how willing they are to invest. And instead of reacting to their effort with more effort, you let their actions speak. And when their actions don't line up with what you know you deserve, you don't go into panic mode trying to fix it. You don't slip into that anxious spiral of, maybe if I just do this, they'll finally see me. You pause, you reflect, you ask yourself if this even feels good to be in anymore. And if it doesn't, you let go. That's self-respect in motion. You see, chasing makes you forget how much you have to offer. It keeps you focused on someone else's approval instead of your own alignment. And ironically, the more you chase, the more someone learns they don't have to choose you because you've already made the decision for both of you. You've already leaned all the way in with no regard for whether they're showing up in kind. That imbalance, it teaches them they can coast, that they don't need to rise to your level because you're already doing the work for both of you. But the moment you stop chasing, you create a gap. And in that gap, people have a chance to reflect. They get to ask themselves if they're really showing up. They get to feel what it's like to not have your energy constantly pouring into them, and they either step up or they step away. And while that might scare you, it's actually the most powerful thing you can do, because it filters out the ones who are only interested in being admired, not in reciprocating love, and it clears the path for someone who doesn't need to be chased, because they're already walking towards you. And more than that, when you stop chasing, you remember who you are. You reconnect with your own joy, your own passions, your own peace. You stop living in reaction to someone else's attention, and you start living in alignment with your own standards. And from that place, you attract differently. You speak differently. You move differently. Not because you're playing a game, but because you're finally done begging for the bare minimum. You start showing up with an energy that says, I'm willing to give, but I'm not willing to beg. I'm willing to care, but I'm not willing to chase. I know what I bring. And if someone doesn't see that, I'm not lowering my price. I'm just removing myself from the sale. That kind of self-assurance doesn't just change your love life. It changes everything. Because when you stop selling yourself short, you finally make space for the kind of love that never needed convincing in the first place. And when that happens, everything you were chasing begins to chase you. You know, it's interesting. Most people don't realize that silence can be seductive. We grow up thinking that if we like someone, we need to show it loudly, quickly, repeatedly. That if we're not constantly messaging, planning, proving, pursuing, we're going to lose them. But the truth is, when you stop chasing, something magical happens. You give space. And that space, that's where intrigue begins. Think about the last time someone backed off a little. The last time you didn't get that instant reply, or when someone didn't show up trying to win your attention. Did it make you wonder what was going on with them? It's not that they were playing games. It's that they weren't crowding the moment. They left room for curiosity. And curiosity is one of the most powerful forces in attraction. We live in a world addicted to attention. We mistake constant communication for connection. We think access equals intimacy. But when you're always available, always chasing, always right there, you don't leave any room for the other person to feel your absence. And if someone never gets to miss you, they never get to feel what it's like not to have you. That emotional absence is important, because it's only in that quiet that people begin to tune in to how much they value your presence. The moment you stop chasing, you shift the energy. You're no longer flooding the connection with effort. You're letting the dynamic breathe. You're saying, I'm here, but I'm not going to force something. I'm not going to keep showing up if I'm not being met halfway. That doesn't come from bitterness. It comes from clarity, from calm self-respect. And it changes everything. People often ask, but won't they lose interest if I don't chase? The truth is, if someone's interest can't survive your silence, your stillness, your non-pursuit, they were never really interested to begin with. They were interested in the feeling of being wanted. They were responding to validation, not to you. The moment you stop feeding that, it vanished. But if someone is genuinely interested, your silence doesn't make them forget about you. It pulls them in. It forces them to reflect. It makes them question what they're doing or not doing. This isn't about manipulation. It's about magnetism. And magnetism isn't loud. It doesn't scream for attention. It draws people in effortlessly. When you refuse to chase, you create a subtle tension. Not the kind that pushes people away, but the kind that makes someone sit with their feelings and realize that you're not just some option floating around in the background. You're someone who can walk away, who values their time, who has enough going on in their life that they don't need someone else's validation to feel okay. That's powerful and deeply attractive, because let's be honest, showing isn't just about showing you care. Most of the time, chasing is about anxiety. It's fear disguised as affection. It's, if I stop, maybe they'll forget me. Or if I don't remind them how much I care, someone else might take my place. And I get it. It's terrifying to feel like we're slipping through someone's fingers. But the truth is, if someone is genuinely drawn to you, they don't need you to chase them to stay interested. They need to feel something real. And the only way they get to do that is if you stop overcompensating for both of you. That space you create, it's not empty. It's full of emotion, full of contrast. It's where someone starts to ask, why haven't they texted me? What are they thinking? Are they still interested? And those questions are where connection begins to deepen. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because you're not easy to take for granted. We often underestimate how loud our absence can be. When someone gets used to your effort, your enthusiasm, your constant checking in, it starts to fade into the background. But the day you stop chasing, that silence rings like a bell. It's felt. And if the connection is real, it wakes people up. They start remembering your energy, your words, your presence. They begin to realize what they were so casually receiving wasn't just attention. It was care, interest, time, investment. And when those things go quiet, the absence starts speaking louder than any message you could have sent. So the next time you feel tempted to chase, to fill the silence with noise, to bridge the gap out of fear, pause, let it breathe, let them come to you. Let the moment do its work. Because sometimes the strongest move you can make is no move at all. There's something profoundly powerful about the moment you stop chasing. Because in that quiet refusal, you communicate something louder than any words ever could. You say, I have standards, and I'm not bending them just to be chosen. That doesn't come from ego. That comes from self-respect. The first thing is, when you chase, you're not just showing interest. You're often making compromises without realizing it. You start adjusting your behavior, toning down your expectations, tolerating things that don't feel right, all in the name of keeping someone's attention. Start subtly. Maybe you wait longer than you should for a text back. Maybe you excuse inconsistent behavior. Maybe you give them another chance after they show you more than once that they're not ready, not intentional, not serious. And every time you do that, every time you override that little voice inside that says, you deserve more, you're slowly teaching them that they can show up halfway and still get your whole heart. But when you refuse to chase, everything changes. You're no longer operating from a place of scarcity. You're not saying, please like me, please pick me, please don't leave. Instead, you're standing in the belief that if someone doesn't recognize your value, they're simply not your person. And that belief, that's magnetic. Because people pick up on your standards without you needing to scream them. They feel it in your boundaries. They feel it when you don't over-explain, when you don't beg for closure, when you stop performing in hopes of winning them over. You move from being someone who's easily swayed to someone who's rooted. And people notice. When someone knows they can do the bare minimum and still have you right there, waiting, hoping, reaching, they stop trying. But when they feel they could lose access to you by not showing up fully, they're forced to evaluate what they really want. That moment of tension where they realize they can't just coast is exactly where transformation begins. Either they rise to meet you or they quietly exit. And both outcomes are a win. When you hold your standard, you weed out the ones who were never serious to begin with. You stop wasting your time on half-love, lukewarm commitment, and emotionally unavailable people who only show up when it's convenient for them. Instead, you make space for someone who's actually ready, someone who sees your value and is willing to meet you where you are, not pull you down to where they're comfortable. The beauty of not chasing is that it's not about shutting down. It's not about being cold or closed off. It's about being discerning. It's about saying, I'm open to connection, but not at the expense of my peace. You still love deeply. You still show effort. You still care, but only where it's reciprocated, only where it's earned, only where it's safe. And that's what many people don't understand. They think if they stop chasing, they'll lose the person. But what they miss is that if you have to chase someone to keep them, you never truly had them to begin with. Real love doesn't need to be chased. It shows up. It makes effort. It doesn't play hide and seek with your heart. When you stop chasing, you also stop justifying behavior that doesn't align with the relationship you want. You're no longer trapped in the cycle of explaining, reminding, hoping they'll get it. You stop trying to train someone to love you better. You let go of the fantasy and accept the reality. And that kind of clarity, that's freedom. It takes strength to walk away from potential, from the maybe, from the, if I just hang in there a little longer, maybe they'll change. But every time you choose your standard over your fear of being alone, you get stronger. You stop choosing someone's potential over your own peace. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow, by what you tolerate, and by what you walk away from. So when you refuse to chase, you're teaching them, if you want access to me, show up fully. If you want to keep me, act like it. And when they see that you're not going to bend just to fit into their comfort zone, it either calls them into something greater or clears the space for someone better. That's the quiet confidence of knowing your worth. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't beg. It doesn't settle. It simply stands. And those who are ready for something real, they feel that. They respect it. They match it. Because when you stop chasing, you stop settling, and that's when everything starts to shift. You know what's exhausting? Trying to convince someone to care. Trying to prove your worth to someone who doesn't see it already. And the crazy part is, we think that if we just say the right thing, do the right thing, become just a little bit more impressive or a little less too much, then maybe, just maybe, they'll finally wake up and see us. But what if I told you that every time you chase someone, you're actually teaching them they don't need to do a thing to earn you. You're teaching them that your time, your energy, your affection, those things come standard. No effort required. You're saying, I'll carry this. I'll make up for what you're not giving. And you might not realize it in the moment, but that's a transaction that slowly chips away at your confidence, because attraction isn't built on pressure, it's built on space. And when you refuse to chase, something powerful happens. You move from this place of trying to force a connection to allowing the right energy to flow toward you. That shift, that's everything. There's this subtle yet crucial difference between wanting someone and needing them to want you back to feel worthy. When you're in that second category, you start molding yourself to their preferences. You laugh harder at their jokes. You text first. You accommodate, adjust, and contort yourself to fit into the mold you think will finally make them choose you. And it feels noble. It feels like effort. But in truth, it's fear. Fear that if you don't perform, they'll forget you. Fear that if you don't chase, you'll lose the connection altogether. But here's the truth. The more you chase, the more you blur the line between desire and desperation. And people can feel it. Even if they can't name it, they feel the imbalance in the dynamic. And when someone feels like they don't have to participate, when they feel like they can show up inconsistently and still have your full attention, you stop being a prize and you become a convenience. But when you take a breath, step back, and stop trying to convince someone to want you, something amazing happens. You start showing up for yourself. You redirect that emotional energy inward. You reconnect to your own rhythm, your own life, your own joy. And in doing that, you naturally begin to attract the kind of people who resonate with that frequency. People who see you clearly, who feel your presence, who want to add to your life rather than become the entire center of it. That's the difference between chasing and attracting. Chasing is a sprint with no finish line. It leaves you breathless, anxious, and constantly seeking validation. But attraction, real, grounded attraction, comes from living your truth without apology. It's being secure enough in who you are that you don't need someone's attention to feel complete, but you're open to sharing your life with someone who's ready to meet you there. And I get it. It's terrifying to stop chasing because part of you believes that if you let go, it's all going to disappear. But here's the hard truth. If something disappears when you stop chasing it, it was never secure to begin with. You weren't building something mutual. You were holding something up, alone, letting go of that role, refusing to carry the entire emotional weight of the connection might feel like loss, but it's actually liberation. Because when you stop forcing something to work, you make room for something real to arrive. So the next time you feel that itch to reach out, to prove, to plead, to perform, pause, ask yourself, am I trying to attract or am I trying to convince? Because one of those things leads to peace, the other leads to exhaustion. You don't need to sell yourself. You don't need to earn affection by overgiving. What you need is to remember that the right person won't make you chase. They'll step forward when you stop running. We don't realize how easily we give our power away. It happens in the smallest ways. When we wait by the phone for a reply, when we check their social media hoping for a sign, when we read into every word they say like it's a secret code we need to crack. And suddenly our emotional state is completely tied to someone else's behavior. That's what chasing does. It shifts the center of gravity away from us and hands it over to someone who hasn't earned it. When you're chasing someone, even emotionally, what you're really saying, without realizing it, is you get to decide how I feel today. If they text, you're happy. If they don't, you're low. If they make time for you, it validates you. If they cancel plans or grow distant, you question your worth. You become a passenger in your own emotional life. And the worst part is, sometimes we don't even notice how much we've let go of ourselves in the process. We start accommodating, excusing, bending over backwards, telling ourselves it's okay, they're just busy, or they'll come around eventually. But underneath all that rationalizing is a quiet fear. What if I stop trying and they stop caring? That fear keeps us trapped. It keeps us chasing because deep down, we think our effort is the glue holding it all together. We believe that if we stop texting first, if we stop initiating every conversation, if we stop doing the emotional heavy lifting, it will all fall apart. And maybe it will, but maybe it needs to. Because when you start something way more powerful, you reclaim your emotional power. You draw a boundary, not just with them, but with yourself. You say, I'm not going to be the person who waits around to feel chosen. I choose myself. And the moment you do that, everything changes. You go from being reactive to being grounded, from constantly checking your phone to putting it down and living your life. From wondering if they're thinking about you to realizing you get to decide where your attention goes. That shift, however small at first, is the beginning of a completely different dynamic, one where you lead from strength instead of scarcity. You stop chasing someone's potential and start honoring your reality. You stop hoping they'll step up and instead step into your own clarity. You begin to trust that you don't need to chase love to have it, that the right kind of love meets you. It doesn't run from you. It sees you clearly and values you deeply without needing to be convinced. And here's the truth most people miss. You're not less caring because you stop chasing. You're not cold. You're not heartless. You're just choosing to care about yourself too. You're not refusing to make an effort. You're refusing to keep making all the effort. You're not withholding love. You're just no longer begging someone to notice it. That's where your power lives. in restraint, in your ability to feel deeply, to care, to love, and still say, but I won't lose myself to do it. That's strength. That's emotional maturity. That's self-respect. And it's magnetic. When you reclaim your emotional power, people feel it. They might not be able to explain what's different about you, but they'll feel it. They'll feel that you're no longer anxiously waiting for crumbs of attention. They'll sense that you're not operating from fear, but from grounded confidence. And that, more than anything else, changes how people respond to you. Some will be drawn in, curious, because you're no longer emotionally available on demand. Others might drift away. But that just tells you who was never going to match your level in the first place. Either way, you win because you've shifted from needing validation to giving it to yourself. You've stopped waiting to feel chosen and started choosing your peace. And the beautiful irony is that the moment you stop chasing, the game ends. Not just with them, but with yourself. You stop playing the role of the person who always gives too much and gets too little. You stop trying to prove you're worth someone's time, and you realize your time has always been worth protecting. You stop trying to earn love and start expecting reciprocity. That's not about ego. That's about alignment. It's about being someone who knows they bring value and knowing that value doesn't diminish just because someone else doesn't see it. It stays, it holds, and it waits for the one who won't need to be convinced to honor it. You're not here to chase someone into loving you. You're here to live, to thrive, to be your full self. And from that place, let love find you where you already stand. When you don't chase someone, it's not about being cold or closed off or pretending you don't care. That's the part people misunderstand. It's not about withholding love or connection. It's about being intentional with where you place your time, your energy, your heart. There's a quiet power in choosing to pause rather than pursue, in choosing to observe rather than jump in. It's the moment you say to yourself, I'm willing to give, but I won't overextend for what isn't meeting me halfway. And here's a thing, it's not always easy to resist that urge, especially when someone sparks our interest or gives us a little attention and then pulls away. Our instinct might be to lean in, to do more, to show them why we're worth it. But what we're really doing in those moments is trying to earn something that was never being offered fully in the first place. And that's where we lose ourselves. That's where we start lowering the bar without realizing it. But when you refuse to chase, you communicate something extraordinary without ever needing to say a word. You raise the bar not by being demanding, not by laying down ultimatums, but by simply staying rooted in your value. You don't have to shout, I deserve more. You are more. And when you act like it, people feel it. They sense that you're not just waiting for someone to choose you, you're choosing too. And your choice matters. That shift in energy changes everything. Suddenly, the person on the other side feels the weight of your standard. They realize they can't keep you around with breadcrumbs. They can't offer inconsistency and expect devotion. They can't disappear and reappear and assume you'll still be waiting with open arms. Because the moment you stop chasing is the moment they have to ask themselves, am I showing up in a way that's worthy of this person's presence? And sometimes the answer they come to is yes. Sometimes your lack of pursuit calls them into a higher version of themselves. It wakes them up. It reminds them that real connection isn't just found, it's earned through presence, through effort, through respect. And when that happens, it's beautiful because then you're not chasing love, you're receiving it. You're not convincing anyone to choose you. They're choosing you because they see your worth and they're ready to meet it. But other times, let's be honest, it reveals a truth you didn't want to see. It shows you that this person never intended to step up, that they liked the chase more than they liked the relationship, that they were more comfortable with you reaching than with actually reaching back. And as painful as that realization can be, it's a gift. because now you're no longer stuck investing in someone who was never going to invest in you. You're no longer trying to prove your value to someone who was never qualified to receive it. Not chasing doesn't mean giving up on love. It means not fighting for love where love isn't being freely offered. It means not mistaking attention for intention. It means not confusing chemistry with commitment. It means knowing the difference between someone who is drawn to your light and someone who's ready to hold it with care. This isn't about playing games. It's not about waiting 3 hours to text back or pretending you're busy when you're not. It's not about tactics. It's about truth. It's about knowing who you are and living in alignment with that knowing. You can be kind, you can be warm, you can even be vulnerable, but you don't abandon your standards in the process. You don't lower the bar just to keep someone from walking away. Because if they walk when you don't chase, they were never staying for the right reasons to begin with. If your stillness makes them disappear, it wasn't your energy that kept them, it was your effort. And that's not sustainable. That's not love. That's performance. And you weren't made to perform. You were made to connect, to love, to give freely, but only where it's safe to give, only where it's mutual, only where it's real. And when you begin to live like that, you'll notice something powerful happening. You'll stop attracting people who need to be convinced. You'll stop feeling anxious about being enough. You'll stop pouring into empty cups. And instead, you'll start drawing in people who are ready, who are grounded, who don't just admire your standards. They rise to meet them. You'll no longer need to chase because you'll be too busy being chosen by someone who never needed to be chased in the first place. And that's where love finally begins to feel easy.